That
All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know how we get down. You hit the play button so you know what you're going to get. If you're going through something, if you're going through a challenge, anything difficult, whatever it is you may be facing in regards to your personal or your professional lives, we are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. That's what makes us the #1 show on innovative teamwork. So we bring you new episodes, new people every single day that reaffirm it and makes it so you understand whatever it is you have had, whatever problems you have had, you're not the only one going through it. So today we are going to have a redefinition of what an entrepreneur actually is. And it's interesting because, I was listening to you before, and you take a concept of, the little engine that could, and now you've built something to call a business engine, and so many things that I want to kind of dive into and pick your brain about. But before I make the intro too long, let me just bring you on. Welcome to the show, Amy Shippy. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. I just get so pumped just with anybody who believes in just getting over obstacles in life, because that's what life's about. And anybody who's encouraging anybody to do that, I think that is a great idea.
Yes, 1000%. And what's interesting about kind of your upbringing, and the reason it's interesting is because normally when we're talking entrepreneurship, it's not coming from the school system. Normally when people become entrepreneurs, it's certain things that they've picked up. There's a certain problem that they saw, and they find it in their heart to figure out ways to fix it and fix it and fix it. And you are, I believe you said, a third generation entrepreneur or something like that. You've seen it in the house growing up. So I think that's probably the best way to start, is kind of talk a little bit about your upbringing and what kind of unique things that you saw growing up that made you really just kind of say, look, entrepreneurship, that's the route I'm taking regardless.
So my mom was an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur. My stepdad was an entrepreneur. My mother's father was an entrepreneur. My dad's father was an entrepreneur. And I can't tell you that I really was like, ooh, that's just what I want to be as an entrepreneur. But it's just kind of how I'm wired up. And I started my first company at 20 years old. I'm going to date myself pretty easily real quick, because I was working at Circuit City, which doesn't exist.
There we go, baby. Yeah, there was something called Circuit. There was actually another one. Was it Radio Shack? I think it was.
I didn't work at Radio Shack. I worked at Circuit City.
Yeah.
And I was in college, and I was selling computers. And like I said, I'm going to date myself really badly here, because CD-ROMs had just come out, and this internet.
I know what those are. Come on, I know what those are.
CompuServe and AOL had just come out, and I was selling these computers, and Geek Squad did not exist for Best Buy. So people would get these 4 boxes and they would not know what to do with them. And they would hire me to come to their home afterwards. And I would set up their computers for them and get that dial-up internet rolling.
Right.
And I was a full-time student in college. And before I knew it, I left Circuit City and opened my own business, just doing that. It was a really flexible schedule around my time being in college. And from there, I just kind of love being an entrepreneur. I liked the problem-solving piece of an entrepreneurship, is probably my favorite part.
Yeah.
So now I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. And I have had super success with my entrepreneurship, and I have lost everything with my entrepreneurship and started all over again. So the matrix are basically the same for businesses. And that's what I try to kind of talk about in my book, and all the different things I talk about is sometimes we just need somebody helping us put everything in order and pulling them up a hill just so they can get the momentum, because momentum builds momentum.
Right. Now, let's go back a little bit, because there were so many great things that you just said, and I don't want them to be brushed over. When we're talking about, quote unquote, dating yourself, entrepreneurship is about what's going on in the world now. Like, I remember sitting in on entrepreneurship classes, and one of the things that the professor would tell me is every single day it's going to be about creating shareholder value, which essentially is basically creating value for your customers, right? So as you were growing up and you were seeing a lot of these people who came before you, now this is way before the internet, way before they could put something online and stuff like that. Can you speak on what they would kind of do to be entrepreneurs? Like, what was their strategy, given that technology wasn't such a big deal now, and kind of compare and contrast what people are doing, like their issues that they have now, and seeing how it's still going to be kind of about helping people?
So, there are definitely today tools like the internet that do help make things easier.
Yes.
However, at the core, I think there's not a whole lot different from opening in a business 40 years ago and opening a business today. I think if you build a brand out of authenticity and start with your community, and that's what you had to do when you were starting a business 40 years ago. You were having to, you were using the tools you had available. So you were having networking events in your community. You were going, at that time you were doing Yellow Pages, was basically your marketing, radio, TV, all the same things that are really outside of Yellow Pages are available today. But, as a new entrepreneur back then, my mom and my dad, they basically would, start in their community. They would go, my mom was a high-end interior designer. So she positioned herself in front of realtors that were selling high-end homes that needed interior designers. So she would make those relationships. My dad had a furniture store. And so he relied on TV marketing. And so he would run, ads on the television.
Right.
But at the same time, it was really all of those things about getting your name out can be made a little bit easier with, the internet and some things like that. Sometimes it can be even more challenging.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they delivered a product with authenticity that was them. And they delivered good customer service. And they delivered the deliverable that they promised. And I think that is, you can do all the great things to get your name out there. And, but if you do not deliver a product or a good or, basically solve a problem, then you've done all this work for nothing. So that's what I learned mainly by watching my parents was it took a lot of hustle to get out there and grow your brand and your business. And then you better be able to back up what you were selling.
Yes.
Because you might get a one-shot deal, and if you didn't back it up, you weren't getting a second shot.
Yes. And like I said, I was listening to you on a previous show, and I love the fact that you kind of call yourself a straight shooter, right? Because a lot of the elements that you're talking about nowadays, they could be just anybody that puts out a website, puts them on their Instagram and call themselves an entrepreneur. They can call themselves a lot of stuff on the internet. And you and I both know, look, there's a lot of steps that like just typing it online doesn't make you an entrepreneur. You have to actually go out, get your feet wet and really get dirty when it comes to, I don't want to use the term dirty, but you really have to go and get rejected. You really have to go out and make calls. You really have to go out and get out of your comfort zone. When you bring people in or when people reach out to you and you have to tell them, look, you don't have what it takes. Can you walk us through what exactly that conversation is? Because it's not even a matter of them not having what it takes because they don't want to sometimes. Sometimes people genuinely just don't know because the tools that are available to us makes it so things become easier to just say something and make it sound good.
Well, I'll give you an example. I was had a meeting about 2 hours ago with a entrepreneur. I do some volunteer work locally here, and the lady had an idea. And her idea was to go in and do this sanitization for restaurants because of COVID.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, let's take that idea. Let's just start with where you are. And then let me ask you a bunch of questions. And so as I asked her questions, I'm like, sanitization only holds in the restaurant business until somebody walks in the restaurant and then contaminates everything you've just sanitized. So it's not, and then people are really fatigued with COVID. So it's not, I was like, I wouldn't kind of make that my opening point, is because people are just kind of having COVID fatigue because they're just kind of tired of it. So I said, but okay, let's start with your point. And then let's start looking at where I can chip away. And so what I do when I work with my customers is I just chip away because I'm not trying to deter them from their idea. I'm trying to help them think about their idea from multi-facets because, and then hone that idea to be stronger. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, being an entrepreneur takes a tremendous amount of tenacity and strength. And you're right. You can open a website and go, I'm an entrepreneur. But unless you have the ability to be criticized or have your idea challenged, and I don't do it in a way to hurt anybody's feelings, but entrepreneurship and opening a business is expensive. You spend a lot of money. And so the people I work with, I don't want them to spend money where they don't have to spend money. And I don't want them to spend money going down a trail that possibly does not have the end result that they were wanting.
Exactly.
My parents always told me to be able to basically defend the idea that I had. I mean, again, it may be a great idea. It just may need to be toned a little bit more. But when people work with me, that's what I talk about. We go back and forth. And so basically by the time we were done with the conversation, she had pivoted to a totally different kind of idea.
That happens. Yeah, it happens a lot. Right.
In the space. And I said, well, then now let's go back and do your research. And because it really does require research to find out if there is a need for the service or product that you're willing to or wanting to sell. But I am not somebody who just is a yes person to people I work with.
Exactly.
I believe in challenging the idea and the thought process, because I believe at the end of the day, that makes a stronger foundation for the end product. And at the end of the day, I just want people to be successful in business. And but I believe in people at the end of the day. I'm not saying, I don't tell anybody no. I just say, well, here's kind of a whole, have you thought about it this way? Right. And if they have, and they're like, I have thought about it that way, and this is the reason I'm going down this road, and they can defend it, then I'm all for it. Because I don't see everything 100% either.
Right. And I kind of liken it always to like that when you're sharpening iron, you see how hard it is and the hot and stuff like that, and you're banging it and banging it and banging it. That's entrepreneurship in a nutshell, because you know what you're going through, that fire, that burning feeling. Eventually, it's going to make it so you're nice and sharp, and you know your numbers, you know your customers, you know your services, you know your offers, you know exactly what it is you need to be. And it's not going to happen if you don't get around folks that are going to really poke holes in your original idea. That should be exactly what you want. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, you need to get, I mean, I've hired several coaches, and that's one of the things that I always say, look, grill me, make it so fun, tell me something that's wrong. I want to find that out because I'm serious about where it is I'm trying to go. And, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want to kind of take you back a little bit. When you're out here fixing computers for people, how is that going? Because you're probably the only, I love that you brought up Geek Squad, because you're right, back in Circuit City days, there was no Geek Squad at all. So when that happens, how ultimately did you get to a point where you were able to kind of plant your flag on, you want to help women when it comes to the entrepreneurship and all that? Because there's been several companies you started, like you mentioned, you failed a few, kind of walk us through the journey after that.
So I was in college, and the computer thing was, again, it was new. There was no Geek Squad.
Right.
Really, your online presence was really, I think,
there's probably something called like an Ethernet cord where you have to actually dumb and then get.
Oh yeah, you had a phone line. You had a designated phone line. So that was kind of what I did when I was in college. It was a great job for me. I made really good money at it, and I could kind of hustle around my time. At 25 years old, my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, but we've now been married for 25 years.
And you guys are in Georgia, right?
We're in Savannah, Georgia. Okay. Yes. And we launched a furniture business, and right around the same time that Amazon launched, and we went online with our furniture business. And my dad, I remember telling my dad, and he goes, this whole web thing, it's temporary, Amy. I don't understand. This is not going to work. And I said, well, I don't think so. I think it's going to be good. And we've got this furniture business, and it was all selling ready to assemble furniture. And I said, and we've got a friend, and he needs to build a business building websites, because at that point in time, there was no templates or anything. You had to build all the code to have a website. Yeah. And I said, he's going to do that because he needs to he's starting to build websites, and he needs a project to start, and we're going to pay him, and it's all going to work out. And my dad's like, this web thing, that's not going to take off. And I'm like, okay.
Okay, Dad.
I mean, my dad still ran a credit card thing through the little slide thing. So he was like, hey,
it's funny because I have an uncle that was a couple of years ago where I had to pick him up from the tire shop or something like that. And I'm in West Palm Beach in South Florida, but I don't go to Miami as often. And I don't know the roads like that, but I'm like, you could text me an address and I can get there, but he's putting me through this and he's telling me to look at this sign. I end up at the wrong tire shop, and it was me and my cousin. I'm like, would this man just send over an address so I can click the thing and hurry up and pick him up? So listen, sometimes it goes down like that, man.
No dropping a pin. They're not. But anyway, we went online with this crazy idea, and and it was a hit. I mean, we went from $1 million one year to 2 million the next year to about $14 million a year in sales, doing this internet thing. And we were, I mean, it was a great run. The recession of 2008 hit, and we held for several years. And then at the end, we just couldn't hold it. Our industry was hit too hard.
Right.
And so at 40 years old, while I was a multimillionaire at 30, at 40, I was 3 kids starting all over again, just again with an idea.
Man.
And I volunteered in that season to be a chaplain at a local hospital here. So I stood in the place where people were going through really big trauma, because they don't call chaplains in on the happy things. They call you in on end of life scenarios. And I really got healed in that time, because I got to see that my loss, while it was a major loss, didn't define me. So my success didn't define me, and that loss didn't define me. And within about 7 months or so of losing our business, my best friend and I had the idea of a cookie business, and we both took $400. And within 9 months of losing my business, I was in the cookie business, and we took that $800, and within 3 years, I had turned that into a $600,000 a year business selling little cookies. And what I learned in that, and when I worked with other people and talked to other people, I learned that, the entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is something that's in you. So if you are an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, and even though loss really is hard and it feels very devastating, and it was very devastating. I couldn't allow devastation to run the rest of my life. I had to find a way to get up and get moving again. And so I do believe a lot in people I talk to and work with, it's about this idea of putting one foot in front of the other and just making some forward progress. It's not leaps and bounds, but sometimes just enough is just getting up and putting one step forward. And so I started that business and reinvented again and built it from the ground up. And then I needed to send my kids, I have 3 sons, off to college, and the college funds we had that were in part of that other business went away.
Furniture business, right?
And so I started my design company. I bought about $1,200 worth of equipment and started my design company. And COVID happened, and I had just rented a new studio, and everything shut down. But I had made some decisions earlier in the year prior to COVID to kind of launch in the wholesale space. Those came about in COVID. So I went from no wholesale business to 150 accounts by the end of 2020. And then I just did the same thing with the pecan company. And so basically for me it's the widget of being in business, and it's my favorite part, but it's working through the processes and working through the obstacles and overcoming those obstacles and not letting those obstacles overcome me. Even in failure. And it's hard to say I failed when I was very successful. So I like to say it kind of was a start over, and the recession happened, and that was, nobody's fault. And I know a lot of businesses that didn't make it through the recession, just like I know a lot of businesses that didn't make it through COVID. I don't think that defines them as not being a successful entrepreneur. I just think circumstances happened that were beyond their control.
Exactly. And, there's so many things that I think are very powerful in regards to what you just said. The most powerful thing being that your boys were there to witness this. And I like you, have a father that has run his own business since I was, in middle school, and my sisters had a job from 14 all the way to now. And my mother was my father was actually dealing with a kidney issue, so my mother had to hold down and make sure. I have very hard working parents, come from a very hard working home, and the lessons that I was taking in as I was seeing them figure things out every single day was so important, to the point where now I've just turned 35 this past year, and my niece is 15, and we were actually in Trinidad for a family reunion, and we're walking the grocery store, and they're like, okay, why did you just buy the thing from there? I'm like, no, because you could get it wholesale from here. And these lessons are kind of intertwined in just regular dialogue. So I'd love for you to kind of share how you are able to make it so, when your boys are growing up and they're understanding more and more, how are you able to establish kind of these business lessons, so by the time they get, that time in life, they're going to know exactly what to do, how that conversation is. That'll be a great thing for us to hear.
So my boys are 23, 21, and almost 19. So I have these 3 boys. My middle son's getting ready to graduate from college at the end of this semester. And he calls about twice a year or so with some new business idea he has.
Sounds like me in college. Yeah, that's
my oldest son, my husband has his own business as well. So my oldest son comes home and helps my husband when he gets a big job, and participates in that. I mean, at every moment in time, my children have had to participate in our life. I have raised men that are participating in life and not being spectators in life. And that's really important when I was raising them, that I'm like, you want to see what the world can do for you. And I am telling you that the world won't lie at your feet. It will be where you go to meet the world. And so my boys are hard workers. I've always had to have a job, not necessarily to pay the mortgage or whatever, but because I wanted them to understand where money came from. I wanted them to understand how hard it was to make money. And I wanted them to understand how hard it was to sometimes part with that money, especially when they didn't want to part with that money. So that's what I did with my boys. I think the proudest thing, or something I think that touched me the most, is when my middle son applied to college. He was sending out his essays, and his essay was about my journey of losing everything and getting up and getting back in the game again. And that was his college entrance essay. And he had already applied. I didn't know about it before he, sent it off. But what that says to me is that basically they watched us struggle. They watched me cry. They watched me broken. But they watched me get back up and get going again. And they watched me conquer, and they watched me succeed, and they watched me thrive. And so in our life, all of those things are part of everybody's day to day. We have moments that we're just on the highest mountain of achievement. And then we have moments that we just don't think we know what we're going to do. But my boys learned through that. And now they're showing that in their life as they are working their internships and their jobs and finishing up school and starting college. That basically you will get what you put into life, you will get back out. And so that's probably my greatest achievement, is that I've been able to grow these men that I truly enjoy watching exceed and excel in their life. And they'll have their own stumbling blocks, and
So they will.
But we have a safe landing here. But at the end of the day, they make their decisions, and we talk about, what it is or what it's not. But we have those conversations all the time with my children.
Yes, and allow me to put my son hat on as I'm listening to you talk. Very, very important that you do that, because me and my mother, we have great conversations as well. And if she doesn't express her vulnerabilities, if she doesn't express and say, look, Ozzy, look, I'm not perfect. There's situations in which I have messed up, and I want you to know that, so you don't walk into this world thinking that whoever you meet or the people that you meet are going to be perfect. It just won't happen like that. And that transparency truly changes life. So from the son's perspective, I'm definitely proud of you. Thank you. We need more mothers like you. And, saying all that makes me kind of want to really dive into this ladies biz whiz, man, the little engine that could, because I thought that was a great concept. And I teach at this school named the Center for Creative Education, and I'm constantly preaching to the kids, hey, these books that we're making you read are going to be things that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. Don't tune it out and all that stuff. And you're like living proof example of how a children's book, just a children's story, can be something now that's obviously helping, hundreds of entrepreneurs.
Because we all at some point in time need a little help. And there is nothing wrong with needing a little help. And so when I was putting Lady Biz Wiz together, and really, I think there's so many, business coaches and lifestyle coaches, and that's probably not what I am. What I really believe I am most is I am a force of momentum. And a lot of times when you're starting your business, it's so overwhelming. You've got all these decisions to make, and you just don't know. You can get bogged down by the decisions. And so when people work with me, we go through decisions really quickly. I'm a very decisive. I see clarity in decisions very easily. And so what we do is we just go through the decisions. And basically, they're now building a backpack full of knowledge. And I'm just helping fill the backpack. I'm just helping them go, up the hill. because once they get to the other side of the hill, they can unhook from me, because now they have the momentum, they have the skills of how decision making works. Because a lot of people struggle with making decisions. They get so scared they're going to make the wrong decision that they don't make any decision. And that is a kiss of death in entrepreneurship. You may be able to handle it at the grocery store, not being able to decide what you want for dinner, but in entrepreneurship, if you become paralyzed by the decisions, you will go nowhere.
So when it comes to the people that, and there's a lot of business owners that tune into the show, most of them 20 or more employees, and they're trying to create a cohesive unit. I'm always talking about an entrepreneur mindset, to where even if you're working a job, you can still have the entrepreneur mindset. What is the avenue that one would take in order, if they want to work with you, and who is the people that you just, you don't really deal with as much, kind of walk us through the person that you're trying to serve, or your
So my ideal, or the person I serve the most, would be your woman entrepreneur. I mean, I work with men all the time as well, but I tend to, relate to the mom who's trying to do a 40-hour job and get a side business off the ground while having children. So basically, I work with mainly women in business who have an idea, and then working with me can look a variety of ways. I have several packages put together, so we can just have a 3-hour vision casting session where we just kind of go, you tell me the idea, and I just do this dialogue back and forth, poking holes, honing that idea. We break that usually into 2 sessions so that we have a poke a hole Q&A for an hour and a half or so. I send them out to do their research and hone it together, and then we come back and then we find out what they've decided. A lot of times I do research on their industry too, just because I think that's fun. So I can work with people kind of small ways that way. I've got clients that I'll take through the process, and they'll just kind of hire me on a monthly basis, and till they get to launch. And then what I'm excited about is coming in October is my new business plan masterclass. It's 8 hours of a digital product. Me and some of my entrepreneur friends here in Savannah. And when you complete the masterclass, you actually get a printed out business plan, and that you fill out as you go along. And in about 8 hours of content, when you complete the masterclass, you have a completed business plan. And we hit every aspect of business, from marketing to numbers to legal structure. And I'm real excited about that, because a lot of people I work with, that business plan piece is really intimidating. And so they don't really know where to begin. And, my dad used to tell me, he says, how do you eat a whale, Amy? And I'm like, one bite at a time.
Yeah, I know exactly that
one. I like to say I'm a huge reader. And so I love to find like a 1,200-page book. That's kind of my favorite. And people look like, how can you read a book that thick? And I'm like, one chapter at a time. I mean, it makes no difference how long the book is. I mean, the process is the same.
Exactly.
And so that's what I try to do. I break things down very simply in a way that really any entrepreneur can digest. And then I'm very goal oriented when you work with me. We set very specific goals with end times on those goals, so that you can actually get that natural dopamine hit every time you check off a goal that you've succeeded. So the goals are always very achievable. Again, keeping that momentum moving forward until you understand that process. And then that process becomes duplicatable. And once you learn it, you can use that same process without me there, just over and over and over again. So that's why I call myself an engine more than somebody that, I'd love to be with you forever. But I want to equip entrepreneurs that they get the skills to do this on their own, that they're not dependent on me, that they learn these skills, they unhook from me. I'm always here if they want to scale or do something different, but that they have the confidence to go on their own and be their best business self.
Right. Now, you actually mentioned books, so I'll give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your book. Was it something that you had written before the business, or an extension to the business? When did the book project come up on?
So I've had the Lady Biz Wiz thing for a couple of years, and I've had a book idea in my head for a while. But we started my podcast, and I was doing all of this kind of what you were kind of doing about women entrepreneurs. But here's the truth. I am not somebody who is disciplined enough to sit down and write a book. So I hooked up with a good friend of mine, and I recorded my book chapter by chapter by chapter, and I sent it to her because I don't believe in letting your limitations limit your results. And just because I'm not good at sitting and writing doesn't mean that a book doesn't have to exist.
Exactly.
So I recorded my book chapter by chapter on my iPhone as I drove around, and I would send her the audio and she would type it in, and then we edited it. And so the book came about from just all these parts and pieces that I've accumulated. Now it's a lot, it's a short little book, it's not super long. It's got kind of a workbooky piece to it, so you can fill out your parts and pieces. And it talks about really tapping into who you are as a person and using your strengths and your weaknesses to build the best business and get your business to marketplace. Because at the end of the day, that's what I believe in.
Yes. I mean, so many important lessons of what you just said, guys. I mean, first of all, you know your weaknesses, you know exactly what it is you're not disciplined enough to do. However, your peers, your friends, someone that you have a relationship with, you can meet them halfway. And that's everything that we've been about on the show for the past 5 years. It's about finding innovative ways to get certain things done and not using excuses. And that takes getting around people. So shout out to the friend who was able to do that with you, type it up. And who knows, I'll ask you, is she somebody that is her strength is typing and stuff like that? So it's just awesome that you're able to make those kinds of connections.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, she had wanted to be an entrepreneur, so she learned a lot about entrepreneurship through the process. She's a very gifted writer, and she's a dear friend. But at the end of the day, again, I mean, we all have things that we're really good at, and we all have things that we're not wired up to do. And I'm not a writer. I'm a reader, but I'm not a writer. But that doesn't mean that a book didn't exist in me. So I'm not going to be like one day, because everybody says, well, one day I'm going to do something.
Exactly.
And I'm like, well, let's today be the day we do something. What is stopping you? And then when we can identify that, then let's create a solution stream to get around that obstacle. So for me, it was writing. I'm not going to write. I'm working on another book about it's more personal, about my journey of success and loss and what, losing everything meant and how I was able to readjust. And the process will be the same. I've got another friend that also writes. These two women actually work together. And the other friend is going to help me get that book, and it's going to be the same process.
Exactly. And like, what thing is, when you get one, I've authored 5 books, and when you get that first one and you've done it, and that feeling, man, that feeling of really selling your own intellectual property is just like, let's do another one. I wouldn't be mad if I came out with a different book every year, because that's what it's about. It's about breaking these barriers and putting it all out there. I'm someone that actually enjoys writing, but I still went and found an editor, read my stuff, make sure it's something how it sounds, get fresh eyes on it. All that stuff is, again, something you can be implementing in your business and in your strategy. You have no excuses, guys. No excuses. There's things you can be doing. So, all that being said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about what's next, what's coming down the pipeline? What do you envision the future to look like for your organization?
So like I said, what's next is my new digital masterclass coming out October 1st or so. So that's what I'm real excited about, because that's going to be able to take a format and, again, break business down super easy into very small bites. A lot of classes out there want you to spend 40 hours. I don't have 40 hours of time. This is 8 hours broken into 8 1-hour segments, broken into 3 20-minute segments. You can do it as you eat lunch or your pizza. I don't have time for 40 hours. I've got stuff to do. But break it down and make it real simple, very executable steps. And then, what I'm looking forward to is I am hoping to start working with an international women's organization in 2025 and spreading the same message to an international platform, because, again, I believe that entrepreneurship is the lifeblood of our country. I believe that small businesses are the backbone that our country should be and has been built on. So however I can help assist in that. And then on top of that, I'm running my 3 companies. So I'm always developing new products. And I mean, I not only talk the talk, I walk this walk. I do this. Everything in my masterclass is what I do every single day in my own business. If it's a new product launch. So yeah, I'm still doing my own stuff, but I am hoping to grow, how I can help people overcome these obstacles. And at the end of the day, whether I can work with you or not work with you, I just hope that you believe at the end of the day that you've got it in you to be successful. Stop with the excuses, start finding ways around the obstacles, and you've got this.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Lady Biz Wiz, and it's LadyBizWiz.com. You can link to my podcast on there. There's a digital version of my book on there. You can order a paperback version of the book. It's got my packages. Follow me on Instagram and at Lady Biz Wiz as well. And I'd love if anybody needs any help, I'd love to help them out.
Yes, and we will also include that in the show notes as well. So, Amy, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. We are back to, I believe you said it was 2008, where you just lost everything. You had no idea where the next check is coming from. I want you to pretend that that version of Amy has come into the Zoom room. Just give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Amy, you are not a one-trick pony. What built the first million still sits inside of you. You just have to get out of this bed, put one foot in front of the other. The next million's waiting for you.
That's it. The mic is officially dropping on that. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you do. Looking forward to keeping up with your journey, man. This has been absolutely incredible. So, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.